want to... Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Anna.
David, thank you for giving also that perspective, because we've been thinking about this, I think the last 3 days already, that we're really looking at the 3 people that are about to be appointed by Trump, especially Rubio,
Oh, I had one, and I'll share this with you, Anna. Usually I don't talk about my work, back then. I had an opportunity to assist him with something specific. He won't be able to do, because some of us in the government, we were inside government, but we are independent of sort. And he backed down to the last minute, and I knew about his background in a sense of how he's pushing the foreign policy, because he's still serving on the U.S. Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate. But also you have to understand where the backing, the funding of his election or re-election is coming from. AIPAC is very, very strong backer for Marco Rubio. He lives in Florida. What is Florida known for? There's a lot of Jewish communities, well-to-do in Florida. That's how, his hawkish policy towards China, because 2 main things I do foresee is going to manifest themselves on the geopolitical landscape. And 2 countries only, Iran and China. But for this, you're going to have to use countries like Philippines in the case of China. And that's to me where the concern that I have about this one. Let's move on to, I'd like to address one particular development that just happened in Manila. And I'm going to share a picture here with the audience, with our community here. Let me get the picture, guys, just to show you. Anna will know this one here for sure. There's the picture here. Marcos Jr. just passed a maritime law. Angry in China. And even now Indonesia is reacting to this. It's like, what the heck is wrong with you? What is this maritime law is all about, Anna? And will it change any objective?
Okay. There are 2 new enacted laws in the country. The first one is the Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act, and the other one is the Maritime Zones Act. So these 2 laws basically, because we don't want to discuss the technicality, it's too legalistic.
No.
But what I'm saying is the laws basically is a manifestation of a legal assertion of the claims of the Philippines over the South China Sea. But the problem with this, as a Filipino, I think if you're not objective, and you don't think of the whole region, you will say like, okay, yay, we have these laws and it's good for our country because we're asserting our rights, legally speaking. And and when it comes to diplomatic lobbying or negotiations, we can use this. Yeah, that's pretty much being nationalistic. But if you put yourself in a situation where you look at the region, you care for the region, the whole South China Sea and the Asia Pacific and the Southeast Asia, you will understand that these laws risk many things and have geopolitical, economic, and some kind of risk that they carry. The Archipelagic Sea Lanes Act and the Maritime Zones Act, these 2 are an assertion of our claim, the Philippine claims in the South China Sea. However, the problem is, if you really look at the South China Sea issue, this dispute, the claims of China overlaps with our claim, and the claim of the Philippines is also overlapping the claim. It overlaps as well with the claim of Vietnam. So it's a very complicated situation. And even you have Malaysia on the other hand. So these laws, if you really look at them, it in certain extent encroaches on the claims of China. That's why China get angry about it. And even with Vietnam. And now Malaysia is actually protesting like China. And they declared their protest already. And it's a big headline in my country. Today, this morning, actually, it was in a big newspaper. Malaysia is protesting like China to a certain extent. So basically, when you talk about regional implication, what are the regional implications to this? And how it, to a certain extent, these laws conflict with what you call UNCLOS. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, the Marcos administration claims that these two laws are based on that. However, if you really read the laws, it actually has it contravenes. These laws contravene with the concept of what you call freedom of navigation and overflight, because because of the overlapping claims. So in a way, other claimant states may contest this one in arbitral in international courts like the ICJ or the ITLOS. So that is the situation that we have. But as you can see, these are domestic laws. The problem with this, how you gonna enforce these laws? Because if you enforce these laws, China will react, Malaysia will react, Vietnam will react. You cannot really enforce this. If you enforce it forcefully, there will be conflict in South China Sea. I don't think China will allow it, and I don't think Vietnam will allow it. So you will facilitate some kind of conflict that it may lead to a military or confrontation between different claimant states. And China is really asserting that this is not good. So now the thing here is there are two challenges to these laws. First is enforcement. Second, would it change the situation on the ground? No, it will not, because I don't think China will allow even Vietnam or Malaysia. I don't think so. So now the question is, what is the reason why the Philippines enacted these laws? I think it's much more two things that I can see. First is it's like a confirmation or some kind of strengthening the claims of the Philippines over the South China Sea. On the other hand, you have to look at the context of the domestic situation of the Philippines at the moment. President Marcos Jr., because of the so many domestic issues and so many like corruption, rising criminality, his alleged, there's an issue against him of alleged that he is a drug user to a certain extent. There are this kind of issues being thrown at him, and then you have also issues that regards to he is not capable or competent in being a leader. There's a lot of these issues being thrown at Marcos administration. So when you look at him domestically, in terms of trust rating and approval rating, it's going down. It's really going down. So that's a fact. No? On the other hand, of course, he wants to assert himself that, and he wants to boast that kind of trust rating amid so many domestic problems. So I think one reason why they push for the enactment of these laws is, to put himself in that position that he is a strong leader, that he protects the country and its claim on the South China Sea and the territorial claims that we have over the South China Sea. Because why? Because Filipinos sometimes don't understand the dynamics and the intricacies of the South China Sea issue. So when you say South China Sea, all Filipinos will rally behind someone who would say, like, we are protecting our territory, our claims on the South China Sea. So it's like a nationalistic, some kind of sentiment. So in a way, that's a political strategy on the part of the Marcos administration to push these laws ahead, push these laws now. And if you really look at the situation domestically also of the Philippines, we have a midterm election upcoming. It's on May 2025. May 2025 is the midterm election. And so in terms of campaigning, in terms of issues by which, voters will be drawn to you if you're running or you have candidates that you're supporting, by which the Marcos administration have their own slate, especially the senatorial slate. Issues like the South China Sea is a very popular issue. That if you say, like, I'm running for senator and I fight China over the South China Sea, everyone will be drawn to you and would look at you as if you're nationalistic without thinking much. You know what I mean? So this is the other side of the story, I think, from my perspective. But basically, according to some of my friends in Congress, these laws has been the bills before it became a law. They were bills. So these bills were in Congress for the longest time. But that's why I debated with them. I said, so you see, these were in Congress for the longest time as bills. But why is it that it was not pushed? Precisely because there are reasons why it was not pushed to be enacted into laws precisely because the dispute is there, and if you push this, it creates a lot of complication and an added complexity to the already challenged bilateral relation between China and the Philippines. And also it creates some kind of commotion in the South in Southeast Asia. And to a greater extent, it challenges the role of ASEAN as a mediating body to manage the dispute in the South China Sea. But well, now it's laws. These are already laws in my country, domestic laws. So now they're just waiting for the implementing rules before it could be, enforced. But that is my worry, enforcement. Because the moment my country, the Marcos administration enforced this, I'm afraid that something will happen in the South China Sea. Because you will put restrictions. Like archipelagic sea lanes, you impose restrictions. So it means, like for example, China's ships cannot just pass through as before, or Malaysian ships, because you impose a domestic law and restriction. However, it's disputed area, so it's so difficult, So these are my worries at the moment, and you can see in the South China Sea, the American forces, military forces, are there.
Of course,
and also the Chinese forces, the military forces, are also there. And America is backing these laws. They already made pronouncement that they are happy and they back up the Marcos administration in enacting these laws. So you can see it's a very tricky kind of support that America is putting on these laws. I think it's more about their strategic interests in Southeast Asia, especially in the South China Sea. That's why they are supporting, the enactment of these laws recently.
Well, when I read it first, the first thing that came to mind is Marcos was pressured to move forward with this initiative. It's because not only he'll hit two birds with one stone, basically. One is for domestic consumption, so that some Filipinos, they, like you suggested, rightly so, that here I am defending Philippines territory and so forth. And the second one is to sort of serve U.S. interest into this. What I find very troubling regarding Philippines' approach, Manila, that is, the government approach to this kind of issues, is that when you look at Vietnam, when you look at Malaysia, for example, those countries, while they do have also some conversation with China regarding these territories, they have not come up on the global surface the way Philippines did. And makes me just wonder, wouldn't diplomacy and dialogue between Manila and Beijing be a better way than flaunting these laws and so forth? I don't know what Philippine government is thinking.
That's also another shift in the way we approach the South China Sea issue in terms of strategy. During the Duterte administration, if you really look at it, Duterte was very clear, okay? And he was saying, okay, we have an independent foreign policy. We deal with all major countries in the world. The United States is our friend. China is our friend. And with China, what we do is on certain issues that we have, or certain sectors, especially economic front, that we have agreement, we don't have conflict, we pursue and we strengthen that. On the side of the South China Sea, it's a separate issue. We will try to do it quietly, peacefully, and diplomatically. We will not escalate tension. Okay, we will not provoke. That's the foreign policy and the approach before under the Duterte administration. When Marcos Jr. came in, it shifted into something else that becomes topsy-turvy. Now, their strategy to the South China Sea dispute vis-a-vis China, it's more really like China. It's a China-focused kind of strategy, when in fact there are other claimant states as well that overlap with our claim. But it's really as China-centric, precisely because of the strong influence of the United States under Biden administration. The strategy is megaphone diplomacy. Everything has to be out in public. Everything has to be noisy. Everything is out there, out of proportion, just to elicit some kind of nationalistic sentiment domestically, and even to paint China in a bad way, as if China will bow down to us or bow down to our strategy. No, of course not. I think China absorbs, and I think other countries doesn't want to meddle with this problem, so they are just quiet, But us, we're very noisy, really. Because the strategy of the current Marcos administration is megaphone diplomacy. Instead of having it a peaceful diplomacy, quiet diplomacy, back channeling, I think that's the best way to resolve a dispute. Marcos Jr.'s strategy is megaphone diplomacy. Everything has to be escalated. Everything has to be out in media and very noisy, which is very different from the way Vietnam approaches its dispute with China in the South China Sea and Malaysia. And if you really look at it, we're like an odd country in Southeast Asia, really, under Marcos Jr. administration. If you really look at Vietnam and China, they have the dispute. They talk about it, I think, and they try to resolve. There are differences, I would presume. But if you really look at the economic cooperation, it's very good. Vietnam benefits from China's investment in many respects, in the same manner that Malaysia also benefits from that. Very good economic relation. On our side, we're very noisy, megaphone diplomacy. Our relationship politically, diplomatically is very bad with China. I'll be very frank about this. And it impacts our economy because the Chinese, we don't have Chinese tourists that much in my country. No one goes to, no Chinese, I think they are not interested to be tourists in my country because there's this sense of there's this anti-China sentiment and even xenophobic kind of atmosphere in the Philippines. Really, it is true. And also everything, if you're a Chinese or a Filipino Chinese, you're being coined as a spy of China. That is the kind of mentality and that's the kind of atmosphere in the Philippines right now, which is not good. Look, we are the main importer, we're the main exporter of banana, of durian. I think durian, to a certain extent, we have good export to the Chinese market. Banana, apple, mango. Now we're not. Banana is one of our good export in China when it comes to fruits. Now it's not us anymore. You know why? Even China is already getting bananas from Laos. Imagine that.
Wow.
So we're losing market. And not only that, it's precisely because of this very challenging diplomatic relation with China. China is not investing much anymore on our infrastructure, digital infrastructure, physical infrastructure, not too much business. Chinese businessmen are discouraged to invest in the Philippines precisely because of the atmosphere that there's xenophobia in the Philippines. So at the end of the day, if you really is wise enough and you think carefully about all of these things, it is the Philippines that is losing in this whole dynamics. It's not China. It's not the United States, really. Because the United States has its own interests. We are being used by the United States under Biden administration as a proxy against China. But United States tries to talk with China and deal with China, and they're trying to have this economic benefits still from China accessing its market. But us, on the other hand, what happened to us? Economically. So we're really like, to be very frank, common sense wise, we are the loser in all of this dynamics, to be very honest. So I really don't like it as a Filipino, But what can I do?
The Filipino people, and that is the big concern for me personally when I saw who is going to be headed for the Secretary of State and Defense and National Security and so forth. Now China, thanks. I know we're going to shift to another aspect, talk about ASEAN and BRICS in a minute here, but I want to just mention something as far as China's strategic thinking regarding this part of the South China Sea. And you are absolutely correct that when we compared, for example, to how Vietnam is approaching this or Malaysia approaching this, diplomacy and conversation with the Chinese. But the Chinese also have to think strategically about, especially when it comes to Malacca. That is one of the reasons. I'm going to share a map here quickly. Why is this important for China, economically speaking? That is one of the reasons also why stability is at most important for China when it comes down to the South China Sea. So, but for us in Washington, we are looking at the Philippines using it as a pawn. Yeah, it's unfortunate, and I know it's not going to bode well for the Filipino people. The elite. The elite in Philippines, they have their own assets outside Philippines.
And many of their assets, David, I'll be very frank with you, are connected with the United States. Many of their investments, many of their assets, the elites are in the United States. They have houses and all of these things. And so, if in any case something happened to my country, if there's like a military outbreak in Southeast Asia because of the South China Sea issue being pushed and we are being used as a proxy by the United States, what will happen to the people, the general population? Many of them will just fly to the United States and they will have good life. But what about the general population? Because that is really the case. And this EDCA basis, to be very honest, when there is a military outbreak, may it be over Taiwan, may it be in the South China Sea, the first strike will be on our side. Why? You have the EDCA bases in there. Of course, the Chinese would strike them first before even going to the mainland United States, because we are actually the one who will be fighting for America. That's how it is, really. But and that is a very bleak situation, and I hope that it will never happen. Because for me, if you really look at the South China Sea issue, the only way, I don't believe this is just what I'm thinking, and even based on studying it, and my dissertation is all about the South China Sea. It's a comparative study between Philippines, China, Vietnam, China, and Malaysian, China. It's economic approach, but at the same time it's geopolitical because my PhD is in economics. So, but my background is politics and international relations. So, what I see in the South China Sea, I don't really see it that the dispute will be resolved in 10 years' time, even in 20 years' time. I don't see it, to be very frank. But how are you going to manage it? That's the most important. The only way for all claimant states to maintain the peace and stability and security in the whole region, the Southeast Asia, the South China Sea area, and the Asia Pacific, is to cooperate, change the mindset from a zero-sum game. Because now the Philippines is pushing for a zero-sum game. This is ours. This is not yours. But China would say, that's ours. Vietnam would say, that's mine too. So it's zero-sum game. Nothing happens to it. The only way is win-win cooperation. And how are you going to do it? Focus on low politics. This maritime laws that was enacted recently, maybe I'll be accused of not loving my country, but that is wrong because I love my country very much, is high-level politics. And this is very hard to bridge. This high-level politics about sovereignty, territorial, it's very hard. It cannot be bridged easily unless you go to court, ICJ. Now, how do you gonna address it? Personally, I look at it, full focus on low politics. Joint cooperation, gas and oil, you benefit both sides. Fishery management, you benefit both sides. Marine exploration, scientific exploration, how to take care of the environment, of the marine environment, everyone benefits. That's how you look at it. You look at the South China Sea as a regional public good, as a regional area by which everyone benefits because it's a regional public good. Everyone benefits from the resources. It's a win-win cooperation, not a zero-sum game. And one more important thing, though, David, as far as I'm concerned, the United States should not intervene in this dispute because the United States is not part of the dispute. It's not part of the dispute. If you're not part of the dispute, you don't have business interfering in even using another country against another country that is a claimant state as well. I don't think so. On the very first place also, it's very hypocritical for the United States to claim that it has some say because even it is not a party to UNCLOS. It did not sign or ratify UNCLOS. So why do you use UNCLOS in pushing for your agenda using the Philippines? Like, for example, they will say, we support this maritime laws precisely because it's based on UNCLOS. But in the very first place, you're not even a signatory to UNCLOS. That's hypocritical for the United States, really. I'm very, very honest and frank here because there's an upcoming Trump administration. I really hope President-elect Trump will have that wisdom that, we need more, we don't need more conflict in this world. There's already Gaza, there's already Ukraine. We don't want to add more in Asia Pacific over Taiwan or even the South China Sea. I really hope he listens to the voices of other people, not necessarily in government, but people like us. That we're real people. Anything happen, we are affected directly because we are not politicians. We're affected by any decision coming from leader of the United States or even leader of China or leader of my country. So I really hope that this message would be listened to, because I'm not talking as a politician, I'm not talking as an academic. I am talking as a real person who experienced all of these things. It's like my country is like the battleground of the competition, rivalry between China, this strategic rivalry and competition between China and the United States. Really, it seems like it's a battleground, you know. I mean, like, and the United States, if the United States really is a friend, it claims to be a friend of the Filipinos and of the Philippines. You should look at our situation not like a user-friendly kind of friend, but really a friend who have compassion of how for us that we will be able to define our own destiny as a country and not be dictated by any country at all. So that's my sentiments. Okay, as a person, I just want to out because you are in. So maybe.
No, I know what you mean. No, you are absolutely correct, Anna. Because if you look at for us, you know, even for me as a citizen here, you know, do I really trust the government? No.